Welcome to the Great Divorce Podcast, hosted by divorce financial analyst and retirement planning counselor Andrew Hatherley. Join Andrew and guest experts as they help late-life divorcees build the financial and mental foundation for a meaningful future. There is life after divorce. Now, on to the show.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Great Divorce Podcast. Let's get right into lucky episode 13. In 1990, the percentage of all persons divorcing over the age of 50 was 8.7%. By 2010, 27% of people getting divorced were aged 50 or older. And as of 2019, more than 1 in 3, or 36% of people getting divorced, were aged 50 and older. What I want to focus on today is a fact that maybe isn't as well known, and that is that the group that's really driving the train for the increased divorce rate of adults aged 50 and older are older adults, adults aged 65 and up. What a lot of people don't know is that since 2010, the great divorce rate has really stagnated among middle-aged adults aged 50 to 64, but it continues to climb for the older group, those aged 65 and up. In today's episode, I want to look at these statistics a little bit more closely and discuss the implications for those people getting divorced and maybe also for society as a whole. I think it's important to give credit to the appropriate research sources, and for this discussion, many of my statistics will be drawn from a research report entitled The Graying of Divorce, A Half-Century of Change, by Susan Brown and Yifan Lin at Bowling Green State University, and a report published by Pew Research Center, written by Renee Stepler in 2017. The Brown-Lin paper was published in April 2022 in the Journals of Gerontology and can be seen as an update to a very influential paper they wrote in 2012 titled The Great Divorce Revolution. The 2012 paper was really the research that shined a light on the great divorce phenomenon and has been widely quoted since. The data for both these papers draws heavily from the American Community Survey in 2010 and 2019. To begin, I think it's important to define exactly what is the divorce rate. What do we mean when we say the divorce rate is increasing? What are the numbers we're talking about? Well, the divorce rate is this: the number of people who divorced per 1,000 married persons in the year prior to the survey among adults in that age group. I'll say it again because it probably requires saying again. The divorce rate is the number of people who divorced out of 1,000 married people in the year prior to the survey among adults in that age group. So, for example, from 1990 to 2015, the divorce rate for adults aged 25 to 39 dropped by 21%, from 30 per 1,000 to 24 per 1,000. Let's look at some specific numbers cited by Brown and Lin in their most recent research on middle-aged and older adults. Now, this looks at the great divorce rate by age group over half a century, from 1970 to 2019. If we go back all the way to 1970 and look at the number of people divorcing per 1,000 married people over the age of 50, the answer is 3.7. So, 3.7 out of 1,000 married people over the age of 50 were divorcing in 1970. Now, if we shoot forward all the way to 2019, that number grew to 9.6 per 1,000. So, this is what really caught people's attention. That's more than a 2.5 times increase in the divorce rate for people 50 and over from 1970 to 2019. And as Brown and Lin noted in their research, most of that growth came from around 1990 to the present. Well, let's look at this statistic. If we only look at the older age group, 65 plus, excluding middle-aged divorcees aged 50 to 64, we'll see that the divorce rate for the 65 plus crowd, let's call them the older group, was 1.4 in 1970, but grew to 5.6 in 2019. That's a fourfold increase in the divorce rate for the older group versus 2.5 times for the overall age 50 plus group. Let's go a little deeper. When Brown and Lynn released their major report on gray divorce in 2012, they were looking at the divorce rates up to 2010. Well, something interesting has happened since 2010 to the present. The overall gray divorce rate has flattened. Actually, it's even dropped a little bit. In 2010, there were 10 people over the age of 50 divorcing out of 1,000 married people. But by 2019, it dropped a little bit. It was still high, but it dropped a little bit to that 9.6 number I mentioned a moment ago. However, once again, let's strip out the middle age group, 50 to 64, and look at the age 65 and older group. From 2010 to the present, the divorce rate continued to increase from 4.8 per 1,000 in 2010 to 5.6 per 1,000 in 2019. So, why is it that older Americans from 65 years of age up continue to see increased rates of divorce, while for middle-aged and younger Americans, the numbers are stagnant or dropping? Well, it's possible that the baby boomers are to blame. I know. Okay, boomer. The boomers get blamed for everything. Well, Brown and Lynn note that there are distinct marital biographies in the boomers marked by exceptionally high levels of divorce and remarriage among baby boomers, which have led to elevated levels of gray divorce during the second half of life. Indeed, baby boomers composed the middle age group aged 50 to 64 in their 2010 study that really put a spotlight on the gray divorce revolution. Unlike the baby boomers, subsequent generations, such as Generation X, born from 1965 to 1980, have come of age during an era of declining divorce and remarriage rates. So while the middle age group, aged 50 to 64, was composed entirely of baby boomers in 2010, by 2019, much of this generation had aged into older adulthood, age 65 and older. Meanwhile, middle-aged people nowadays are starting to be replaced by members of the Generation X generation. What this suggests is that the divorce rate for the middle-age group may continue to stagnate, while divorce for the older 65-plus adults, who are now primarily baby boomers, continues to grow. It's entirely possible that gray divorce will increasingly be dominated by older rather than middle-aged adults. Okay, enough statistics. Well, I can't promise no statistics, but I'll lighten up a little bit. I've mentioned in previous podcasts there are special concerns for people getting divorced after 50. Issues that are more likely to be prominent in a midlife divorce are likely to be even more exacerbated, or at least take on a special character for a late life divorce after age 65. Especially when we consider that divorce leads to a declining standard of living for both parties. This decline happens to be more severe for women, who experience a 45% decline in their standard of living versus a 21% drop for men, according to recent research. Let's take a look at life expectancy. A woman's life expectancy is 79 years in the United States, while a man's was about 73 years, according to government data from 2021. However, for men and women who are already 65 years of age, the life expectancy goes up. This is a simple fact of actuarial tables. The longer we live, the longer our life expectancy. So the life expectancy for a woman who is now 65 is actually 86 years of age, and for a man, it's 83 years of age. For financial advisors such as myself, this has big implications for retirement planning. A divorcing couple who is 65 are seeing their net worth essentially cut in half at a time when they're likely in retirement or very close to it. Now, granted, it's very likely that a 65-year-old couple has more assets to divide than a 40-year-old couple, but what they don't have is as much time to rebuild or build those assets. So it's extremely important that the marital property division and potential spousal support are structured in a way to provide the financial foundation for each individual's life over a planning horizon of at least 20 years, given life expectancy numbers. In fact, I would argue that most financial planners like me would tend to err on the side of conservatism and want to plan for 25 or 30 years from age 65. If the truism that divorce represents the most important financial transaction in someone's life is in fact true, and I would argue that it's more true than ever for a 65-plus divorcee looking at a potential 30-year retirement planning horizon, one caveat I would add to this discussion of 20 to 30-year retirement planning horizons is that many people are rethinking the idea of retirement. Many 65-year-olds in excellent health are still working. In fact, many are transforming the type of work or how they work to be more reflective of their passions, interests, and personality. And in doing so, they find that continuing to work is more satisfying than a life dedicated to playing golf or lying on the beach. Their continuing to work also generates an income that will reduce the need to draw down from retirement savings. Of course, there's always an on the other hand, and in this case, the on the other hand is that some people may find it hard to adapt to new careers or different careers, or even modify careers after late life divorce, and it may be harder to succeed the later in life one commences these new careers. At this point, you might want to make a note and listen to episode 8 of the Great Divorce podcast, where we discussed the topic of retirement and work, or retirement after divorce, with retirement and career coach Amy Ginsberg. Now, of course, not all 65-year-olds are alike. It's more likely that a 65-year-old will be facing some sort of health issue than a younger divorced person. This is where issues such as the possible unavailability of health care benefits from a former spouse's employer can be an issue, and in some cases, even projected nursing home care costs can be an issue that wouldn't exist for a younger divorcee. One area where older divorcees may have more flexibility is in the division of the family home, which typically would have built up more equity over time. In such cases, couples over the age of 62 going through a divorce may be able to use strategies such as reverse mortgages to add more flexibility to their financial planning going forward. Now, I'm not advocating for or against reverse mortgages, and I know that historically they've been looked on as a somewhat sketchy product, or at least a product that has not always been sold in the most ethical manner. But I've been doing some research on changes in the reverse mortgage industry and intend to bring on some experts to the Great Divorce podcast in future episodes where we can discuss the development of this product over the years and how it might potentially benefit older divorcing couples with substantial equity in their homes. Another issue is spousal support, commonly known as alimony. Depending on the state in which you're divorced or the judge overseeing the case, alimony amounts maybe less due to a payer's retirement or decrease in income. There's also the potential loss or reduction of Social Security when a party remarries or receives benefits at an earlier age. Social Security is a complicated issue, and I always recommend speaking to someone at the Social Security Administration personally about your case. But for starters, you might want to visit episode 3 of the Great Divorce podcast, which is dedicated to the issue of Social Security. One other issue, which I'll be looking at in a future episode of the Great Divorce podcast, is the issue of estate planning and beneficiary designations for this older divorce group. The fact is, despite my earlier comments on life expectancy, both the divorcing party and their parties and their attorneys need to be aware of the greater possibility of death during the divorce process for the 65 and up age group. The likelihood that there may be problems associated with the distribution of retirement accounts or insurance policies during the divorce process is exacerbated for this group. While I've been talking about the economic and health-related issues for the older divorcee, the psychological and social impact can be even greater. Divorce can come as a far greater shock to the system if it's coming after a very long marriage. And it's likely to challenge a person's view of the world and their role in life. While the person initiating divorce may see it as an opportunity for growth or meaning or renewed purpose, the other spouse may have a different view altogether and find themselves adrift. We know that divorce's impact on children, even if they are adults, can be divisive, and family friends may find it difficult to maintain a friendship with one or both parties after divorce. A few minutes ago, I mentioned the economic penalty that women pay in gray divorce, with their standard of living declining on average 45% versus a decline of 21% for men. Where men typically pay a more severe penalty is in this social realm that I've been discussing. Jocelyn Crowley, in her book, Gray Divorce, What We Lose and Gain from Midlife Splits, speaks to the social penalty faced by men particularly. Men, unlike women, tend not to have deeper networks of support to carry them through life transitions. Men are more likely than women to fear abandonment by their adult children. For numerous reasons, adult children tend to direct their negative responses toward their father more than their mother. And this can also wreak havoc with a man's economic well-being in older years as care-related roles are switched with their children. Research has shown that women more often stated that their friends and adult family members sided with them over their ex-husbands in a gray divorce. And women often tend to be the social organizers in a marriage, thus leaving the man without training in this particular social skill. Men, for a variety of reasons, find it more difficult to make friends with other men as easily as women make friends with other women. And men being men, they're less likely to share the pain they feel in this area. All of these issues can be more pronounced when you've been in a longer marriage, you've lived longer with a certain social environment, and this changes, when you're 65 or older. In conclusion, I want to say that the special concerns that gray divorcees may have versus younger people getting divorced somewhat different for the oldest group of divorcees, those aged 65 and over. Some concerns may be more pronounced, others less so. And of course, each divorce has its own special circumstances. It's important that divorce professionals, like divorce financial advisors, attorneys, lending and real estate professionals, and therapists and coaches, be sensitive to both the psychological and financial concerns of people in this age bracket. That's it for this episode of the Great Divorce Podcast. If you'd like to learn more about how I help people before and during divorce, please visit my website, wiserdivorcesolutions.com. And if you're emerging from mid to late life divorce and are looking to establish the financial foundation for a meaningful life going forward, please visit me on transcendretirement.net. Until next time, take care.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of the Great Divorce Podcast. To learn more or get in contact with your host, you can visit Andrew's website at transcendretirement.net. Also, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. That helps others find the show, and we greatly appreciate it. Thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
Information provided is educational only and should not be construed as legal or tax advice. Each situation is unique and should be discussed with your tax or legal advisor prior to implementation. Andrew Hatherley is not an attorney and does not provide legal advice. Information provided is financial in nature. Advisory services offered through Hatherley Capital Management, LLC. Divorce financial analysis services offered through Wiser Divorce Solutions, an affiliated company.